Hello and welcome to the Vaults of Terra. My name is Ed and today we're going to be continuing our Horus Heresy series with a quick look at the Battle of Isstvan III. This was the first major battle that began the heresy, with Horus slaughtering troops loyal to the Emperor within the ranks of both his and his fellow traitors' legions. This signalled his split with the Imperium and the beginning of the largest civil war in Imperial history. Prior to the battle, an Imperial expeditionary fleet had gathered, which consisted of the Sons of Horus, the Death Guard, the World Eaters, and some of the Emperor's Children legions. The Primarchs of these legions had already sworn to follow Horus, but they knew that there were elements of their legions and the expeditionary fleet, which included Imperial army soldiers and Titan legions with their crews, who may not decide to join with the traitors. Some were recruited during the battle, but the rest had to be removed by force. In all, there were approximately 200,000 Astartes present prior to the battle. The fleet had gathered because of a distress call from Isstvan III, who had apparently turned away from the Imperial truth, and the governor was leading the planet in open rebellion. Initial assaults on the system's outskirts by the Death Guard and the Emperor's Children eliminated an outpost. With the enemy blinded, the full might of Horus's forces were brought against the planet. It was a massive assault, with thousands of marines gathering via drop pod to assault the planet's defences, although the navigational errors meant that many of the pods dropping to the planet's capital, Coral City, crashed into the city's high towers, meaning the marines inside were delayed, having to descend the towers on foot to rendezvous with their forces. The Titan DS Irae was also deployed to the planet, destroying massive swaths of the enemy with its mighty weaponry. The enemy deployed most of its soldiers to counter the Space Marine invasion, including a band of rogue psykers known as War Singers who could do immense damage in combat, even to fully armed and armoured legionaries. Unfortunately for the Istvanians, the legionaries outclassed them in almost every way, and their defences were crushed very quickly. The governor, Vardus Praal, was killed alongside his bodyguards by the swordsman Lucius of the Emperor's Children. Once the Istvanian resistance was crushed, Horus enacted his plan. Almost every member of the expedition on the planet had been deemed too loyal to the Emperor to remain, and Horus had decided to remove them en masse whilst they were recovering from the conflict. Starships loyal to Horus prepared to drop Life-Eater virus bombs on the planet, whilst troops loyal to Horus on the ground, such as the Princeps commander of the DS Irae, were ordered to secure their locations from external atmosphere to wait for the virus bomb's effects to pass. Once secured, Horus began the bombardment of the planet, while simultaneously ordering all Remembermancers, who had been documenting the fleet and the legions, killed to prevent any informational leaks. The Astartes on the planet were tough, but even with their armour they were unable to resist the Life-Eater virus, being killed in moments alongside the remaining Istvanians, all quickly dissolving into a foul-smelling sludge. After which regular weaponry could be deployed, igniting the organic residue and vapours and reducing the planet to ash, scorching its surface into a lifeless husk. Unfortunately for Horus, the plan was not perfect. Captain Saul Tarvitz of the Emperor's Children was a loyalist and had been able to warn some of the loyalists on the planet, who had found deep underground bunkers and other sealed locales to hide from the virus and the resulting firestorm. Loyal elements of all four legions survived. Post-firestorm, the traitor World Eaters returned to the planet from Horus's fleet without Horus's permission to engage the loyalists in combat, forcing the War Master to fight the loyalists directly rather than bombarding them again, unwilling to waste his allies at this stage or to show any weakness in front of his faction. Unfortunately for the loyalists, they had little chance of survival. They were greatly reduced, with the majority of the four legions hunting them down. The surviving Sons of Horus gathered under Captains Garvel Loken and Tarak Torgadon and declared that they were once again Lunar Wolves, as they had been in the beginning of the Great Crusade. They returned to the Governor's Palace to mount a defence with the other surviving loyal Astartes. Their defence was mighty, causing great losses to the traitors, but their resistance was futile, as they were ground down by sheer numbers. They had hoped to delay the traitors for some time, giving time for the Emperor to hear of this treachery and deploy more legions against Horus. They could have held for some time, but the swordsman Lucius hated the loyalist captain Saul Tarvitz, and despite starting with the loyalists, he switched sides. He slaughtered his own group of loyalists and went after Tarvitz, leading the traitors to the heart of the loyalist defences. However, Tarvitz bested Lucius and forced the newborn traitor to flee under the cover of traitors' fire. At that moment, Loken and Torgadon had travelled to confront their former colleagues, captains from the Sons of Horus loyal to Horus, Ezekiel Abaddon and Horus Aximand. Failing to convince their former friends, they fought. Torgadon was killed and Loken was buried under the rubble, thought dead by his former colleagues turned enemies. The Loyalists were now surrounded and their defences were breached. Horus commanded the DS Irae to fire on their remaining fortifications, forcing the traitors on the ground to return to the fleet. This finally allowed Horus to begin his bombardment of the remaining Loyalists, killing all who remained, as far as Horus was aware. With all the loyalists purged, Horus began planning for his next major battle, later known as the drop site massacre of Isstvan V. Of all those who fought or were at Isstvan III, the only loyalists known to escape at the time were aboard the old Death Guard ship known as the Eisenstein. Nathaniel Garrow of the Death Guard was on board when Tarvitz's warning was issued, and he was later joined by Icodon crews from the Sons of Horus, who had evacuated as many civilians from the flagship as they could before they were killed by the traitors. The Eisenstein then left the system, fleeing back into the Imperium to the Imperium to warn them of the heresy to come, although their warning was unfortunately delayed by various situations which we may mention later. As mentioned previously, these two Marines, along with several others who fled with them on the Eisenstein, would later become the core of something known as the Knights Errant. This would later become known as the Grey Knights, the defenders of the Imperium who fight against Chaos Demons to this very day. So that's everything I wanted to say about the Battle of Isstvan III. I hope you found that educational. The next Dark Heresy game will be going up on Twitch on the 3rd of October, so if you're interested you can come and watch us there. If you have any questions or any comments you'd like to make, please leave it in the comment section below. Other than that, I hope you've enjoyed the video today. See you next time on the Vaults of Terra.